Okay. I want to share this, and I'm a little afraid to, but this is my story. March 25th, 2016. I had my beautiful, beautiful little baby boy. All right. And for the first year and a half of his life, he was developing normally. He was hitting all of his milestones. And then somewhere around like 18 months, we lost his words. And we struggled to regain them. Sorry, there's something on my screen and it's annoying the daylights out of me. We had taken him to this place called ACRP. I forget what the acronym stands for. But they were supposed to be able to evaluate him for autism. And really, that was a joke. So anybody who lives in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, and you go to Somerset for ACRP for an evaluation, be prepared. It's a joke. Your best bet is to go to the Children's Behavioral Unit in Pittsburgh, Children's Hospital, because there you will get a trained child psychologist who knows what to do and who knows how to handle anything that your child may possibly do. And she's friendly about it. Her name is Dr. Alicia Stryber, if I remember right. So after one botched autism eval, I had no idea what to do. And I began looking into doctors to see if we could get him evaluated closer to home by intelligent people and kind people, because the people at ACRP were not kind at all. They were not understanding at all. And I fail to understand how people can work in a setting where you're going to come across children with behavioral issues, with autism, and heaven only knows what other kind of conditions, and you don't have any compassion, especially for a person you can tell this is their first kid, this is their first rodeo, in particular with just the idea of special needs parenting, and you're going to be a cretin. Okay. Eventually we found the Children's Behavioral Unit out of UPMC Children's Hospital, Pittsburgh. We went to Children's South because it was closer to where we live. Still about an hour and a half or better away in Bridgeville, Pennsylvania, which is a hop, skip, and a jump away from Pittsburgh. We had an early morning appointment. He was diagnosed. And I will never forget it. My amazing sister, who has a child on the spectrum, she messaged me that day while we were waiting for the results of his ADOS test. And she said, even though you know deep down in your heart that he's autistic, she said, hearing the words out of the doctor's mouth, she said, it's going to feel like a death blow. And I thought about it. But shockingly enough, that wasn't what leveled me. That wasn't. That was not even remotely close to leveling me at the time, because I'd been doing my research for months. My son was ticking off so many boxes for the signs and symptoms of autism. I just knew. I mean, by that point, I'd had her tell me he was autistic because she recognized the signs from her own son. I'd had a complete stranger in church at the time. And she has two amazing children on the spectrum, a son and a daughter on the spectrum. And the little girl said it before her mother said it about my son being autistic. So hearing Dr. Shriver say, oh, well, your son has autism, that was nothing. That was like, okay, it's confirmed. Now I know what he has. Tell me how to help him. And of course, she's rattling off all these services and things she thinks he's going to need. And thank God for Medicaid, because, I mean, we're low income, horribly low income. And Medicaid will cover everything. Medicaid will pay for it. He said he has Medicaid. He's fine. Then, of course, I asked her, I said, okay, because she hadn't said anything about where exactly on the spectrum he fell. And I think it kind of shocked her that I had done this much research in advance of this appointment. And I said, okay, well, where would he fall on the spectrum? Where would you say he falls? I said, I know he's not a level 1. I said, so that puts him, to my notion, either a level 2 or a level 3. Level 1 being a child who can function pretty well without a ton of support system, without a ton of extra supports in the public setting. Basically, if you're a level 1, you blend in with everybody else. Level 2, you need significant supports. You don't quite blend in. Level 3, you definitely need very significant supports, and you don't necessarily blend in with the public. My son at the time was predominantly nonverbal. He had very few words. He communicated primarily through sign language. And Dr. Shriver said to me, I would say he's right smack in the middle of level 2. She said, but he is young enough, and you caught this early enough, that with the proper therapy and the proper help, your son could get to a level 1. Ideally, he can get to a level 1 should he's very smart. He said, no surprise, he's very smart. Most kids on the spectrum are considered very, very, very intelligent. She said, but what he lacks is functional communication. She said, yes, he can sign a bit. She said, but he can't speak. She said, so I would say he's right around a level 2. She said, and this is the part that my own anxiety-riddled brain focused on for ages. She said, but also where he's at level 2, he could very easily go to a level 3. And I said, well, level 3 would kind of be worst case scenario, right? And she said, not necessarily. She said, there are plenty of kids who start out at a level 3 and they work till they're a level 2. and then eventually they can get to a level 1. Do not be surprised or afraid if your son goes through the different levels of this disorder at any given point in his life. Just because he starts out here at what I would say is like the midpoint of level 2 doesn't mean he can't and probably won't at some point hit a level 1 or level 3. It all depends on the support system you have, the supports he needs to be able to function, and whether or not he ends up needing medication. And of course, I'm sitting there, and the only part that my brain even remotely focused on was, oh my God, he could go, ideally he's going to get to a level 1 where he'll be able to function on his own. He won't need a whole ton of therapists and, woohoo! Or he could go the other way where he needs a boatload of it. And I'm sitting there thinking, dear God, how am I going to handle this? I've heard the horror stories of how you wind up having to miss work to take your kids to all these therapy appointments. As a single parent, I can't afford to not work. And then, of course, this year COVID-19 happened. But, you get my point. Like, no. Please don't tell me I'm going to wind up having to miss work. Which I will if it's flat out essential and it's going to benefit him. Don't get me wrong, but I got bills to pay. I'm a single parent. I can't possibly afford to be constantly calling off work. And it has been almost a year since then. As some of my previous videos have showed, my son is making great gains during this quarantine business with his speech. This morning, he's been running around going on about how Gordon pulls the express because he loves Thomas and Friends. He's been running around going on about, Mom, Gordon pulls the express. And of course, he doesn't say the word "the" yet, but he goes, Gordon pulls express. And I could not be happier. This morning, he decided he was going to pounce on me in bed, after a rough night, thanks to seasonal allergies keeping me up again. And, he decides he's going to blabber at the top of his lungs about Melman and Marty from Madagascar, and I decided I was going to tickle him, and I said, where's your off switch? Where's your off switch? Where's that little boy off switch? There has to be one. And he's rolling around in bed giggling, and out of nowhere he says, off switch. He says, off switch. And I said, yeah, where's your off switch, buddy? Where's your off switch? And he looks at me and he goes, off switch, buddy. And I nearly died laughing. My head was pounding from how many days without really sleeping very well. I have some issues with my teeth, and so they're hurting. I am literally in pain, miserable. But here he is, rolling around going, off switch, buddy. Wow. And he is a constant amazement. He is. And I just want to say this. I make these little videos talking about what our life is like with autism. Not just to help educate the world, because there are hateful people who think that autism is a discipline issue, that it's, that people with autism are so far down the rabbit hole on a mental capacity, for lack of better words, that they just don't matter. That they don't have feelings. They don't, say or do whatever you want to them. They don't care. That is not true. If you have met one child with autism, you have met just one child with autism. That is the hard thing about it, is not all children with autism are the same. Because autism presents itself differently in each child on the spectrum. And it presents its own unique parenting challenges. As, believe you me, I learn every day, all the time. You don't ever quite feel like you've got a handle on it. And I'm not going to lie, there are a lot of days where I thank God above my son is an only child, because I know my stress levels are constantly through the roof now. I cannot imagine having another child, neurotypical or not, in the house to try to contend with. I would probably be driving myself to the nut house if that happened. Not that I don't love my son. I do. And I feel horrible that he doesn't have any kid in the house to play with. I feel horrible. I mean, we have a cat and a dog, but they're both seniors. So, I mean, gravy sakes, the cat's going to be 14 this year, the dog's going to be 13, and we've only had him not even quite a year because he was my great uncle's dog, and he doesn't know how to play with kids, which makes for an interesting combination at my house. Okay? The only playmates he has, thanks to quarantine, are Mommy, Nana, an old cat, and an old dog. So yeah, it hurts that he doesn't have any kids his age to play with. It hurts that he doesn't get to go to school and see other kids his age, because he had friends. His one cousin was in his class. And now they don't really get to see each other because of COVID-19. No one understands the struggle of dealing with a special needs child during quarantine, unless you are one of those parents with a special needs child. It is difficult. It is lonely. It is isolating, even more so than your normal life in a way. It is horribly isolating, not gonna lie. Well, I have to get into the post office, preferably before this truck decides they're gonna bulldoze into this teensy tiny car. Okay. Well, I thank you all for watching. If any of you have any questions about autism, I will do my best to answer them. Of course, I can only answer them within the scope of how autism pertains to my child, because autism, it is a spectrum. It is completely unique to each and every individual who has it. So, I mean, I can answer your questions as best I can. If I can't answer it, I will direct you to a place where you might find an answer to the question. Like I said, I'm not even quite a full year into the whole autism spectrum parenting thing, so I do not claim to be an expert. I mean, gravy sakes, I don't even claim to be an expert on my own kid, because things with him change daily. So, I will say goodbye. Just wanted to pop in for a bit while I had some free time and some quiet time. Because in my household, there is no such thing as quiet time unless the kid is napping. Okay. Have a fantastic day, y'all. Bye.